Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prabh, and today we're going to discuss about ISO 27001 2022, how to build ISMS context document. It is a part of my continuation series where in part 1 I covered end-to-end how to implement 27001. In second part I discuss about how to prepare the project document, and today we're going to discuss about how to write ISMS context document. Before going to write ISMS context document, you should know what should be covered in the context document, why we add those stuffs, and we're going to discuss practically how to write that particular document. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic, because I'm planning to cover in the next video how to do the gap assessment. My name is Prabh Nair. For more information, you can check my LinkedIn profile. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Thank you. Okay, so first part, before we jump into the detailed white paper and all that, first let's understand what we're going to cover. So today in this video, we're going to discuss about ISMS clause. So whatever the clause 4 to 8 or 4 to 10, whatever we have, it is mandatory for you to implement. And clause 4 is a starting point. Now, when it comes to the ISMS clause 4, it basically have a 3 sections, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and it is mandatory for you to comply. Okay, and what details you need in that we'll discuss in detail. So if you take an example of 4.1, they talk about understanding the organization and its context. So here the organization, you should have a visibility about their internal issues, their external issues that is relevant to the purpose, and that affect the ability to achieve the intended outcome. Here the intended outcome is ISMS 27001. Then we have a clause 4.2. Once you identify their issues, you need to identify the relevant parties, which is basically used to achieve the 27001. And finally, in the 4.3, we're going to cover about setting the boundaries and applicability of the ISMS in the system. So if you take a context of the 4.1, so if you take the context of ISMS 4.1 clause, here, we need to demonstrate that your ISMS is aligned with the mission objectives and business strategy. You need to identify documents, the organization activity, functions, services, product partnerships. So let's say example, my company, okay, for which I'm implementing ISMS, which is called InfoSec Train or Aspirants. So, we have a list of services like training, consulting. So these are a list of services we identify. Then we identify that, okay, we have a CRM which hosts the sales data. We have a data center which hosts the SOC, whatever. So here, understand the context, it means, how the organization operates. So that's why we identify the documents, the activities, functions, service, products. We also define the external and internal factor which can influence the ISMS. Example, like, I'm planning to start a new business in Europe. So I want to comply with GDPR. I want to comply with DPDP. I want to comply with RBI in India. They have a specific requirement of information security. So I have to document that internal factor, external factor. And more important, we need to recognize and take into the account issues related to the information security within the stuff. So all those things is part of the requirement. So here you can see this is the document that I'm going to discuss in this particular video. We're going to discuss about each and every section, why we fill that and how we fill that. We're going to discuss everything in this particular video. Coming back, as I said, context is important. Without that, it's difficult to drive the functions. Then we also have a 4.2, which is called a second clause, interested parties. Now you are the interested party for me because you are interested to watch my content. Same like aspirant have a consultant clients. So they are the external parties. We have an internal stakeholder, that is internal parties. So interested parties are relevant to the information security management we have to document. So normally if you talk about any organization, is a structure that, the organization has a structured entity and usually registered with the government body. And this may example like institutions, charity, associations and all that. So when we're talking about this context and all, it's very important for us to understand who are the stakeholders. Okay, what is their expectation? So that's something we are documenting in this particular section. The third part, as I said, we need to determine the scope. Scope is very important, okay, which basically define the boundary and applicability of ISMS 27001. So the question is basically, in order to identify the issues, you need to first identify the scope. So question is how to identify the scope. So first you need to understand the business and its objective. Okay, so InfoSec train doing training, aspirant doing consulting, we understood very well the business is that, and that is something aligned with their objective. So here the action is you have to schedule the interviews. Now I'm not saying that okay for you CEO is available, not necessary. So their CIO, CTO, they can basically represent on behalf of their senior management. So you conduct the initial interview and gain the understanding of the organization goals. That's the most important part, how information security impact them. Prabh, any example? Yeah, so you had an interview with the stakeholders and they said, okay, we holding a CRM which hold all the PI data, and the CRM is hosted on the third party. So I'm assuming, okay, so I asked the second question is, do you have any controls? Like, do you have any policies which say, okay, how you store data there? So they said no. So this is basically the issue you identify. So you have to ask stakeholder, describe their core process, okay, how the information flow within the organization. And this is basically help you to map out the critical area. Second part is you need to review the existing documents. As I said, by the existing document, you can able to identify the issues. Example, you ask about, do you have a policies? They said, no, we don't have a policy. So the first internal issue is that you need to have a policy. Okay, we have a risk management. It is more ad hoc in nature. So we review all the current policies, procedures, network diagrams, and we will check whether it is competent or not. So we look for the documentation gaps. Okay, we look for the inconsistencies, and we also look for the areas without existing security policy. So that is how you can define the thing. Then third thing is I list out the possible assets. Okay, I have a one web server, we have a CRM, we have a data center, we have a workstation which hold the information. So this is how I identify the critical assets. And the best way is that first you identify business, then you identify the asset which support the business. So it is easy for you to follow the top-down approach. Okay, I asked the question, what kind of a services you have? Training and consulting. Okay, in the training, what kind of assets we have? We have a CRM and we also have a data center. Then we understand, okay, CRM is where? Hosted in-house or external. So this is how you can able to identify the list of assets. How many workstations we have? How many department we have? How many system hold in the department? So these kind of questions we need to ask. One simple fundamental rule is that any system doesn't hold any data, PI data, or any department doesn't hold any data. That will not be part of a scope. Any department directly, indirectly holding a data, using data for analysis, they will be part of a scope. Example, marketing team. Marketing team use PI information for the data correlations and all that. So they will be part of a scope. Okay, facility management team, they don't hold any data. They are the external parties. So they will not be part of a scope. So I'm just giving an example here. We have another branch in Bangalore. I don't want that to be included in the ISMS because that operation, it's basically into like a support team. They don't have access to any PI data. So there's no point of adding them into the scope. So one simple fundamental rule is that any asset which hold the sensitive information or critical sensitive data, it will be part of a scope. So we also need to check the legal regulatory requirement. We ask them, okay, what kind of a customer you are dealing with? So we are dealing with European customers. So GDPR is there. We're dealing with Indian banking institutions. So RBI is there. We're dealing with the public sector. So IRDA is there. IRDA is for the insurance sector. SEBI is there. So it's very important. We need to pen down all the legal regulatory requirement. What I used to do is I internally create one compliance matrix. Okay, before we finalize the ISMS scope, I used to have a template which is maintain the compliance matrix. Okay, if you're doing a business in this kind of a country, these regulations are applicable. If you're doing this kind of a business in this kind of a country, so this is something I do for my internal purpose. I don't do for the customer. So that every time I don't need to check, okay, which country has which regulation. So these are some of the things that you need to gather, which give you the clarity about the scope. Okay, so now we're going to start with the first clause, which is called 4.1. So which means understand the organization. Organization is the entity which run the operation. Aspirant in this case is the organization. So I need to understand the context, why they exist, what is the challenge they have, and why they want to go for ISMS 27001. So here when you're talking about the clause 4.1, they say you need to address your internal issues and external issues. So internal issues like organization structure, policies, roles, responsibility, capability. And these are the internal issues because of which they are going for the ISMS. Second is external issues like regulatory, because of regulatory reason, we have to comply with 27001. As things are becoming very dynamic in nature, there is an emerging data protection law which required a strict control over the personal data. We need a ISMS, we are planning to move data in the cloud. So the third party going to hold my data. So I want a control. So we have identified some internal and external issues. So question is how to do this activity. So what we used to do, we used to do workshop. Okay, with the stakeholders to gather information about the internal external issues. We look for the strength, we look for the weakness, we look for the opportunity, we look for the threat. So this is the tool that we are using to understand the ISMS. So I will give you an example of the SWOT. So what I'm going to do is I will assemble the cross-functional team. Like it will be a team from IT, HR, legal. Okay. And why? Because different perspective help in identifying the comprehensive list of factors which affecting information security, and then decide whether SWOT will cover the entire organization or department. So now first step is identify strength. So we ask, okay, what is the strength? So they say we have a robust cybersecurity infrastructure. We do regular VAPT, we do regular audits. We have a skilled IT professional. Fine. Then second thing I ask about the weakness. Okay, so we have seen, they said, okay, there's no strong policies, lack of risk management, lack of employee trainings, insufficient budgets, which if we don't follow, we could not able to meet our business visions. Fine. Then we look for the opportunities, like, opportunities like we are planning to, we have to use emerging secure technologies. We are partnering with a lot of new customers, regulatory incentives are there, market demand is there, and I want to meet that. That's why we need an information security. Then we look for the threats also, like, increasing cyber threats, changing in the regulations, competitors, natural disasters. So by using this strength, we can capitalize on opportunities and mitigate the threats, and we create an action plan based on that. And by using a SWOT, we can able to inform your risk assessment process. We can set the ISMS objectives, and we also record the SWOT analysis. Okay, so that's why SWOT is very important. So when we're talking about context, which is called 4.1, the first is called as a clause, which is called internal issues. Okay, so internal issues refer to the factors within the organization that can impact the ISMS. And this can include the organization culture, which is the most important foundation. And the best way you can able to identify any organization culture is checking their policies, checking their frequency of security awareness. That shows the maturity about the information security culture. Because no matter you have one of the best solution, no matter you have one of the best, one of the best security product, but if the culture is basically bad, then no solution can able to protect. So it's very important. You need to understand the culture. You need to understand the structure, technology, and all that. So question is what kind of a question I will ask? So if you ask me, I used to ask this question is, what is your organization main objectives and goal? How do you relate this to the information security? And the reason of asking this question is to understand how to align ISMS with the organization strategic goals, which department. So that gives a visibility. Second is which department or team handle the sensitive information. That give me clarity, because that helped me to identify the scope. Okay. So the reason of asking is to, get the visibility about, that what kind of assets we need to protect and all that. Okay. Then third is what current information security policy or procedure we have. So that shows a culture. Okay. That shows a maturity. Then what resources are available to support the information security. The purpose is to understand the internal capacity of managing and maintaining ISMS. How is the organization culture around information security? Do employees understand and follow security practice? Okay. So here to evaluate the organization culture's support for security policy. So by asking this question, you will get some kind of issues. Okay. And then we can document. So that is basically my internal issue. So I will give an example is, I had a meeting with a customer. They told me, okay, Prabh, we're having a PI information, but we don't have a proper data classification process. So everyone has their own assumption when they classify. So that's the first issue you have to document. Second is, okay, we don't have a strong security policy. That's the second issue that we need to document. And then this become my process-based risk assessment when I'm moving to the next level, because this is what we need to improve. They said, okay, we don't conduct regular security awareness training. That's a third issue. So we are identifying those issues because of which we could not able to achieve our objectives, and how the ISMS improving these parameters and improving the information security objectives. That's why we have to identify these issues. Now, second part is called as the external issues. Okay, we have to comply with GDPR. That's why we need ISMS. Client has a very particular requirement of information security. That is why we need ISMS. And emerging technologies are there. Lot of mobile workforce we need information security. That's why we need a ISMS. Sometimes third-party vendors or partner have access to sensitive data. That's why we need a ISMS. Because by asking this question, okay, we'll get a more visibility. Then last is, what are the key information security concern raised by a customer client? They said, okay, we need to have this control, we need to have that control. So that's why we need ISMS. So this clause 4.1, where we are identifying the internal and external issues, because this is the same thing you have to document in the scoping context document. Okay. So these are the external issues that we have documented. So I have a case study here. Let's say example, the case study is Aspirants is a consulting and training company handling the sensitive client data and intellectual property. They're in a process of implementing 27001, need to identify both internal and external issue affecting their ISMS. So here we have an example, like, after asking about the organization culture, you will find the consulting team have a high information security awareness, but marketing department lacks the formal understanding data protection. So that's an issue you have identified. And these gaps in security culture become the internal issue that could affect the ISMS. So I have to rectify this. Now, if you see the external issues is by asking the legal regulatory requirement, you discover aspirant has a European client and need to comply with GDPR, but this external issue will shape their data protection and privacy policy within the ISMS. So this is how you can basically document. So this is how I'm creating one table diagram. You can see external issues are a regulatory requirement I want to comply. That's why we need ISMS. Because of change in the market conditions, I want to make my information security more strong to compete in the market. So actually, if you get confused, always remember one thing is market condition, regulatory requirement is always document. Okay, we want to comply with 27001 because we need to meet the regulatory requirement. We want to implement 27001 because I want to improve my capability function so that I can able to compete in the market. We are implementing 27001 because I want to address the technological advancement. So these are the common metrics we can add in the scoping context, and I'm sure the auditor will pass this audit. On the other side, internal issues like organizational structure, you have to document, like, there is a hierarchy is missing. Then policy procedure is missing. So that need to be addressed. Roles and responsibility need to be documented. Capability culture. So this is just a sample you have to document in the context document. Now question is, okay, I understood this need to be add, but what need to be exclude? How to identify what need to be exclude? Understood. So exclude part is called as a exceptions. What need to be exclude from the ISMS. So how to identify? So as I said, anything that doesn't hold a security or does not relate to the security, we can remove that from the scope. So that will be part of exceptions. So example like marketing or general administrative functions may not handle your sensitive data. Remove that from a scope. Okay, but make sure your exclusion do not weaken the ISMS. Example like financial department we have, which handle your sensitive financial data, would compromise the ISMS. So it must be remain within the scope. Okay, they're saying that no, don't add me. No, they have to be because they hold the invoice and other customer information. So whenever you doing the exclusion, you have to give a justification. You need to clearly explain why it has been excluded. Okay, lack of relevance to information security, non-involvement in the handling sensitive data, and more important, independent security control already in place. So this is how you can justify. Okay, so I have one formula here which I follow. Like anything which is non-relevance to security, we can add that in exceptions. Just give me a second. Okay, second is no compromise to ISMS. Ensure the exclusion do not introduce any gap. Justify your exclusion. Give the clear clarity about that and document thoroughly. Okay, so this is something is part of the exceptions. Now, once you're done with that, we're moving to the ISMS clause 4.2. 4.1 talk about understand the context and document the issue. 4.2 talk about identify the interested parties. So when we're talking about identifying interest parties, okay, we need to determine who has an interest in the ISMS, like employee is there, customer is there, regulators are there, shareholders are there, and then we need to document their expectations. So for that, you need to conduct the interview and review the contractual, legal, regulatory requirement, and more important, you need to document the interested parties and their requirements. That's something part of the 4.2. Now, how to create the table. So this is how the table we have. Like example, employee, their expectation from ISMS is that secure work environment. Customer has an expectation, data privacy. Supplier has an expectation, secure communication channel. Okay, regulator has an expectation, we have to comply. Shareholder has an expectation, protection of organization assets. Partner has an expectation, confidentiality agreement. So if you take an example here, what are the specific need and expectation of your employee regarding a secure work environment is employee need a secure environment to perform our duties. Okay, so what is the data we required here? We need an employee survey, interview feedback, and report. Now, if you can see the second part, which called here is this one, contractual. What contractual obligation do you have a customers and supplier related to the information security? So we have a customer and supplier. They have some requirement. So explanation will be here is the contractual obligation often include the security requirement. So we can have a copy of contract, terms of service agreement, and SLA. Then we have a legal regulatory. So explanation will be here is compliance is mandatory. So we need a list of applicable laws. Then stakeholders. So we need to identify who are the stakeholders, which help in understanding who is impacted by, influenced by information security, and confidentiality agreement. So these are basically the interested parties we have. And finally, we define the scope of the ISMS. So we got this visibility here, and we're going to define the ISMS scoping now. So now we are in a stage where we need to define the scope, okay, because we understood the issues that we have to document, roles and responsibility that we have to document. So now determine the boundaries and applicability of internal external issues. This will be part of the document, and we have to make sure everything need to be documented. So we have a step-by-step process. So the first step, as I said, define the scope. Second is we need to identify physical location. So you want to implement ISMS in Noida office, or you want to implement multiple office. So you need to list all the physical locations, and same you have to document the scope, which include the head office, regional office, and then determine the relevance. Why? So that is also very important. Then you document the physical locations. So that is basically part of the step 2, where you identify physical location. Then we have a step 3 where you identify technologies which is cover in the scope. Like we have a IT infrastructure, CRM, data centers. Then it's not necessary you have to document the criticality, but at least you need to document the list of technology like servers, CRM, which is part of the scope. Then you need to document the list of process. So in my case, training is a one process, HR management is a process, finance is a process. So I will document the process. And then if something need to be excluded, we have to add one exclusion section also, like this need to be exclude. Okay, like example, operation department I have to exclude. So that's something I will document in this section. So this is how we will create the sheet. Okay, like customer data, employee data, financial record, intellectual property, description, where it is stored. Okay, and then head office, regional office, data centers, that will be documented. So let me show you how the template look like and how to document this template based on this data. So first part, give the document ISMS scope and context, and you need to create one Excel sheet, okay, in which you need to give a document reference number, document number 1, document number 2. So this will be the document number 2, and you will giving the information document classification. Definitely it is internal. Version is 1. The last date was revised on 16 August 2024. Document author is Prabh Nair, owner is Aspirant Technology, because for them only I am building this particular document. Now coming back, I am giving a label here. You need to give the header. So here you can see the options. In my previous video, I already explained how to create this header and the footer. So aspirant, internal document, scope and context, classifications internal, revision history is there, approval is there. So the same thing what we create. Revision history, how many times the changes happen, we have to update that. Let's say example today is September 14th. So I will update the version 1.1. I will give the date, I will give the revision author and give the summary. Distribution list approval sheets. So they have to revise the signatures. Now this is the table of content. In my previous video, I already explained how to create the table. You don't need to manually enter all this query. Whatever the heading you give, suppose you're giving a heading number 1, and then subheading is heading 2. So when you create a document like that, you just need to go to insert, and you can basically go for the this one, which is called as a table of chart and all that. So that's something we can do that. So that can be done. Let me show you. So if you go to the reference, there is a called as a table of content. So once you create all the documents, next pages, you can go to the table of content, automatically it will create that. But only condition is that introduction should have a title. You have to select the formatting here. Heading 1 will be the introduction, and organization context will be the heading 1. Now this is a company profile under the organization context, so you have to select heading 2. So instead of first creating this table, you first come with the content. Okay, so when you're talking about the table of content, it includes multiple data. If you can see, we have a multiple data here. So let's say example here we have an introduction, we have a organization company profile, functions. Okay, then we have a product services, external issues, internal issues, parties, purpose, and scope. This is the mandatory details are required when you preparing this ISMS context document. Now coming back, the first part is introduction. It is very important to give the introduction. I'm not telling you have to narrate the entire story, but give at least high level introduction which talk about what is aspirants. Okay, why we are going for the ISMS. So we're giving the information about that. You can copy paste the same thing. Document outline, how the business operation. So I'm giving a high level introduction about this document. So document is basically talk about the business process, and aspirants can implement the most effective mix of controls. And in this document, what I'm going to cover, I will document that. It is not mandatory for you to add this, but it is good if you can add. It will basically give a good, perspective. Like, okay, at least from the introduction, they get the visibility what you're going to cover. So I can see that I have documented the organization context. I have documented the issues. I document the interested parties. I document the information security requirement, and I also document the scope of the ISMS. So for the continuation of that, first I give the organization context. So organization context of aspirant technology is detailed in the following section. So I'm explaining about the document. What is the document all about? Then I talk about the company profile, like what is aspirants, when it was basically established, and what are the key clients. Same you can copy paste. And then you have to document the functions. Here you can see, so I have HR functions, I have a finance function, I have a marketing function, I have a operation department, I have a consulting and operations. So that's something I have documented. One thing which is missing is training and division, so which is missing here. Then we have a organization products and services. So currently we offer training services and consulting services. It's up to you. You want to club function and product services as a one, or you can create a separate example. These are the functions we have within the company, and these are the two services we are offering. So let's say example, you're doing a ISMS implementation for some product company. So in that case, fintech project and all that will be documented. Is it clear? Okay, so next part we have is internal issues. So there are a number of internal, external issues that are relevant to the purpose. So we have to document those issues. Now here you can see how to document. See, the internal issue is we have an organization structure strategy, and the goal of the aspirants is to be provide top tier consulting training. So this is something I got the visibility, but current team, which is basically they have, and the current security practice they have, it is not help them to achieve the strategy goal. So I document the internal issue. Second is the company have only basic data protection policy. I document that. So with the help of ISMS, we implement the control. They have a dedicated IT security team, but limited cyber security expertise. So organization required further investment. So the culture was missing. So we document that. The current process are not effective. So we document that. So these are the general issues that I have documented here. So if you don't understand this, okay, so keep it simple. Policies is the biggest issue, document. Controls, whatever the gap you identify after discussion, document. Okay, whatever the current cybersecurity skills or issues that you identify, you can document. So this is the internal issues we have. Then external issues, like they want to comply with GDPR. So that is a first external issues. Client has expectation that they need a appropriate security control, so that we have documented. They have emerging technologies, but they don't have appropriate controls for the emerging technologies. The current social culture, the increased client demand for data privacy. That's why we need ISMS. Okay, third party vendors, they have a contract. We want to move data there. We need appropriate control. That's why we need a ISMS. So these are basically the external issues. So whenever you get confused, document one or two external issues, like legal, regulatory, if they're using cloud. Okay, cloud controls we need, or if they want to compete in the market, document that. Like for the competition, they want ISMS. So this is how you can document the external issues. Then we're talking about the parties. Who are the parties? So employee is a party, customer is a party, supplier is a party, regulator is a party, shareholder is a party, and partners are the parties. So what is the legal requirement is, employees data, their data need to be protected. If we fail to protect the data, there's an issue with law protections. They have a contract, make sure the contract have to be secure in a secure manner. They're looking for a secure work environment, so we have to make sure we should have appropriate physical controls. Customer, the expectation is to comply with legal. they have some service level agreement, data privacy transactions. Suppliers have a trade regulations. Regulator want to achieve the compliance. Shareholder want a corporate governance. Partner want a partnership agreement. So from that perspective, ISMS will basically meet the criteria. Then we talk about applicable legal regulatory. So my company want to comply with GDPR, DPDP, because we doing so it's a DPDP. Sorry for that. So DP. So DPDP and GDPR we need to comply. So we have documented that. So that will be the one category you have to add. Then next category is purpose and scope of ISMS. So here the first is understand the organization need, implement and operate control measures, monitor review performance, and this will be remain same. So no matter you creating ISMS proposal for any company, this will remain same. Then you talk about the purpose scope. So scope is basically, this is something you can copy from a project document. Okay, the scope will be the operation, whatever is happening in Noida headquarters. Department will be the IT, HR, finance, operations, technology, information as a. Out of scope is personal device and activity unrelated to information security. So this is how you have to create. Now we have to document. If you don't go for ISMS, what is the impact? This is also be copy paste for all the document, like, imposition fine will be there. You can miss the business opportunity. Violation of contractual commitment will be there, damage to reputation. So this is very common in most of the companies. So you can copy paste that. And then by implementing ISMS, we can achieve some objectives. This is also can be copy paste, like, protecting client. That's why we need ISMS. We need to ensure the accuracy. That's why we need ISMS. Maintain the uninterrupted access to key systems, ensuring the organization meet GDPR. Okay, identify assets, assess the risk. Okay, safeguarding the information. So this is somehow copy paste because it's a common information security objective you can see in all the document. And then we finally talk about the scope. We have already documented the scope of the ISMS. And these are the functions which is part of the organization, like consulting and advisory, information security training services, IT department, HR, finance department, geographical locations, outsource services, organization boundary, which are basically part of an organization. Then we also have a product services like consulting, training, IT, legal, and data privacy. So one thing I want to tell you is, this is basically the scope. It means in terms of physical. Okay, within that physical, what are the high level thing we have? And then we're talking about detailed level of services, which is part of a scope of ISMS. Like these are services, which is part of a scope. Okay, these are list of product and services part of a scope. Okay, and then we also have exclusion. We're giving a justification for that. Just example, general administrative support. We are excluding this. The reason for exclusion is because event coordinations are missing. So event coordination does not hold any data. We are excluding public training materials because it does not hold any data. And social media management, we are excluding that because we don't hold any kind of a sensitive data. So this is how we have to give a justification of exclusion. And finally here, you can document as a signature. And then you submit this document for the proposal. So only thing you need to do major changes in any scoping context document is the scope and the context of the organization. Rest will remain the same. So let me summarize again. So here, the first part, we're talking about organization context, company profile, you can copy this from the website. Function, you can ask for the high level. Product services, you can ask. Internal, external, you have to identify. External always remain same. Legal, regulatory, marketing, competition. Internal, like strong culture, security policies, security awareness training. Then you identify interested parties, you have to document that. Purpose, why we need purpose, ISMS, very common. Purpose applied to scope, very common. Potential impact is very common. Information security objective is very common. Then we're talking about the scope of ISMS here, where we're talking about the organizations. So list of functions, product services, and exclusion. So this is how you can create a context document. So do let me know, how do you find this a special video which talk about how to write scoping, and what is a new thought process it comes to your mind after seeing this video. And do share your suggestion in the comment box because your feedbacks are very important. And do let me know, shall I make the part 4 where we're going to discuss about how to do gap assessment and create a security policy. So this is all from my side. If you're new to the channel, do subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. Good day. Bye.